studied?
No, like you're not gonna.
You took it in one shot. How many times did you take
The day after this.
That's all right. That's all they got. You only got one wrong.
He says they cheated.
Was it, was it another? Those are the ones I missed.
any unauthorized video or audio recording is strictly prohibited. Lastly, if you must leave, please only do so during the applause. Thank you, and please enjoy the performance.
Tonight. I'm very excited to share this presentation with you. I don't want to keep you here all night, so let's get started. Today's presentation is Everything But Carmen, exploring the underperformed works of Georges Bizet. Just right off the bat, if you weren't able to grab program notes and translations on your way in, I do have a QR code here, so you can scan that now if you'd like to follow along on your mobile device. So, now, whether or not classical music or opera is a part of your daily dose of listening, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the opera Carmen. Carmen is an opera by Georges Bizet and has become a hit amongst musicians and non-musicians alike, particularly that of the habanera. Yes, yes, you know it, and it goes a little something like this.
Apprivoiser, et c'est bien, on va qu'on l'appelle, s'il convient de refuser. Rien ne fait la sourire, l'on parle bien, l'autre se tait. C'est l'autre que je préfère, il n'a rien dit, mais il me plaît.
This song has rightfully earned its place among opera's classics, but it seems to predominate conversations about Bizet's music. And this begs the question, why don't we hear about any of his other works? Carmen certainly isn't the only thing he's written, and spoiler alert, if it was, he wouldn't be here tonight. Now, my first time singing Bizet was in my senior year of undergrad for my senior recital. As an undergraduate, I had a lot of freedom, and maybe a little too much freedom, in selecting my own repertoire. My past teacher would tell you that I had quite the knack for coming back with really obscure pieces in hand. Well, now that I've been set loose to pick the music for this recital, let's just say some things haven't changed. In my hunt for music for this recital, I came across more of Bizet's works, and I thought to myself, why doesn't anyone do these? And the rest is kind of history. Now, back to why the rest of his music isn't as widely known. As I've delved into these works in preparation for today, I've come to find that they're really, really, really hard, and maybe that's why no one wants to do them. Well, kidding, but only just a little. Now, truthfully, in doing this work, I've come to find that Bizet has really compelling and beautiful music that's not just Carmen, so I can't say what the true reason is for its lack of relevance today. However, that's the reason I have you here at this presentation. I'm hoping to shed light on these underperformed works as part of a larger movement to bring more of his music back into our everyday dose. So, for a little bit of an overview for today's presentation, I would be amiss if I didn't, talk about the guy a little bit, so we're going to go through a bit of his biography, and then I'm also going to dive into some of the style characteristics of his music, some of his operas, and then we'll finish off with some of his art songs. Okay, so Georges Bizet was born in 1838 in Paris, France. And he was born to two very musically gifted parents. His father was skilled in voice and composition, and his mother possessed talent on the piano. Due to this background, his affinity for music manifested at a very young age. He began lessons with his mother at the ripe age of 4, and by 10 years old began to study at the prestigious Paris Conservatoire, which, of course, is where every musical prodigy of that day was destined to study. At the Paris Conservatoire, Bizet studied with several teachers, the most influential being teachers such as Antoine François, Lévi Fromentel, and Charles Gounod. During his time at Paris Conservatoire, he won several small prizes for his performance as a student, which foreshadowed what was to come. He began composing at age 10, and in 1857, by age 19, had already won the Prix de Rome. And for those of you who don't know, the Prix de Rome was a competition-based award that you could win, and it was awarded to young, promising musicians, artists, and painters. During his time in Rome, Bizet became exposed to the Italian style of composition and was particularly a fan of Rossini and Donizetti, which we'll circle back to a little bit later. In addition to these two composers, Bizet also admired Mozart, Mendelssohn, Meyerbeer, and Schumann. Now, while Bizet was, kind of getting his opera thing going, he studied across several mediums of music, so not just opera, but also orchestral works, piano solos, art songs as well. Now, it may be surprising to know that despite Bizet's relevance today, he struggled a lot as a composer. He began many works that would remain unfinished and unperformed, and many of the works that were completed never hit the stage. And for my musicians out there, I'm pretty sure you can relate to this thing called imposter syndrome. We're always really hard on ourselves, and, I'm not surprised that composers back then were going through the same exact thing. So, due to this difficulty with getting into opera and many of his works being unfinished and ill-received, he worked in other positions such as a rehearsal accompanist, an arranger, and a piano teacher. And he struggled to get into these theaters because typically they were performing works by composers who were already well established, such as Rossini, Meyerbeer, Verdi, Gounod, and Offenbach. But in addition to this, all these odd jobs that Bizet was doing, he also worked on other genres of music, composing various art songs for salon performances, as well as orchestral works and solo piano works. Now, although he was struggling a little bit to begin, it wasn't going to stick too long, because his status as a winner of the Prix de Rome caught the eye of Leon Carvalho, which was the director of the Lyric Theater at the time. Now, Leon Carvalho took over the Lyric Theater in 1856, and he made it his mission to not only commission the works of established composers, but also the works of rising composers, including Bizet himself. His first commission for Bizet came in 1863, where he was hired to compose The Pearl Fishers, which remains arguably his second most famous opera today, other than Carmen. Other commissions included Ivan IV and The Fair Maid of Perth. Now, for the fair, Bizet finally had his debut with the Opera Comique with his opera Carmen, and that's where he kind of, peaked with music, as we can see for today. But despite this opera being finished in 1873, there were two different directors that were at the theater at the time, and these two directors were kind of not agreeing on whether or not it should hit the stage. Eventually, it did in 1875. The reason that it wasn't really going to go up on the stage is because if you know Carmen, it's a little risque, a little scandalous, and they thought that would be kind of a large shock to audiences at the time. Now, it eventually did go up in 1875, and it went up in 1875 and ran for 33 performances before his untimely death in 1875. He died at just the young age of 35. So his opera became popular after his death, unfortunately, and he died not really knowing how popular it would be today. Okay, moving on to a little bit about Bizet's style. In my research of Bizet and his music, I didn't find any particular comments on his musical style that stood out to me. And while it was agreed that he was influenced by several composers, including Rossini, Donizetti, Mozart, and Gounod, to name a few, there were never any direct comments as to how this manifested in his music. The attempts that were made to describe his music are quite broad, not giving specificity as to what was truly happening in the score. However, in learning the music for this performance today, I have come across several interesting facets of Bizet's music that I would like to share with you. Some of the general characteristics have been listed up on the screen, and this includes melismatic passages and coloratura, chromatic inflections and chromatic scales, sensitivity to text and its musical setting, strophic and modified strophic settings of text, arpeggiations, the faux trill, which we'll come back to later, and exoticism. Now, as I mentioned in the brief introduction, this music was really difficult for me to learn. And I typically consider myself to be a pretty fast learner, so it was a little hit to my pride, I'm not gonna lie. But, Bizet just really knows how to keep you on your toes. His music often goes places that you don't expect, or establishes patterns that are later broken. Most troublesome for me is that Bizet loves chromaticism. However, this is of no big surprise, as any romantic composer will always have a few sharps and flats in their back pocket. Now, jokes aside, Bizet often uses large chromatic scales in his pieces, both ascending and descending. He also uses chromatic inflections to color certain passages in different words. And another common theme in Bizet's music is the use of strophes and modified strophes. And I think all but two of my pieces have this setting, which is another reason why it was just a little bit hard. But as mentioned earlier, Bizet appreciated German Lied, and so it is most likely that in studying German Lied, he became enamored with this strophic and modified strophic setting of texts. Now, one of the most notable features out of this list that I'd like to draw attention to is the faux trill. Now, this isn't really the technical term for it, if there even is one, it's just simply what I've decided to call it. This faux trill sits somewhere between a trill and a tremolo, consisting of a quick alternation between the intervals of a second and a third. Bizet used this technique in several pieces that you will hear today. Finally, the conversation wouldn't be complete if exoticism wasn't mentioned. Carmen is widely known for its Spanish flair, and this is particularly evident in numbers such as the Habanera, which is sung by Carmen, and Votre Toast, which is also known as the Toreador song, and it's sung by the character Escamillo. Now, Carmen, however, was not the only piece of Bizet's that pulled on Spanish culture or cultures of other music. One of the art songs today to be presented, Guitar, also features Spanish influence, drawing on the style of the bolero, which is not to be confused with the Cuban bolero. Details of this influence will be discussed in the art song section of today's presentation. Now, the Spanish influence always struck me as a bit odd, considering Bizet never went to Spain, but with enough score study and enough time studying Spanish composers, it's not surprising that he would be able to extrapolate the things that would give a Spanish flair to the music. Now, on the contrary, Bizet had a lot of Italian incorporation into his style of music as well. And this makes sense because Bizet actually spent time in Italy following his study with the Prix de Rome. Now, he was particularly inspired by their operatic literature and found himself writing in the bel canto style used by the likes of Rossini, Verdi, and Donizetti. But he also drew on Italian culture in some of his non-operatic literature. This can be seen in his piece Tarantella, which draws on the folk dance called the Tarantella. Further details will be discussed in its perspective section. Now, these characteristics that I've listed today certainly aren't owned by Bizet, and they're not all encompassing of his work, but they're just a few that stood out to me, and hopefully they'll stand out to you in today's presentation. So moving on to a bit about Bizet's opera. As mentioned earlier, Bizet faced a lot of criticism, both from himself and from audiences, which resulted in many unfinished and unperformed works. With only 2 of his operas largely recognized today, it may be surprising that Bizet began up to 30 other operas, and despite this large output, only 7 of them went on to be performed, which are listed above. And most of these had a bit of negative feedback from audiences. Now, La Maison du Docteur was Bizet's first opera, and it is speculated to have been written between 1852 and 1855. However, little of this work survived, and it was never performed. Bizet's first opera proper was The Miracle Doctor, which he began composing in 1856. The libretto was written by Ludovic Halévy and Léon Batu, both of whom were selected by Offenbach to participate in a one-act libretto competition. With music set by Bizet, the trio went on to win this competition, and the work was performed at the Buffet Parisien in 1857. Aside from Carmen, the other opera with relevance today is The Pearl Fishers, and as mentioned in his brief biography, this work was commissioned by the owner of the Lyric Theater, Leon Carvalho. This opera initiated a series of engagements between the two, and Carvalho also commissioned other operas such as Ivan IV and The Fair Maid of Perth. Now, despite this support from Carvalho and getting Bizet's works up into the theater, they were still met with mild success. Each of them ran for about 18 to 20 performances each. Carmen ran for about 33 before Bizet died, and if that wasn't successful, certainly 18 to 20 wasn't going to be enough for him either. Now, out of this list above, the 2 operas today that I'll be focusing on are Don Procopio and La Jolie Fille de Père. Don Procopio was composed in 1857, but its first performance wasn't until 1906. Now, this particular opera stood out to me because it is one of Bizet's operas that has a setting to an Italian libretto. Now, considering that this was Bizet's very first project after leaving Italy, it's not surprising that he would want to explore the text and styles of Italian composers and operas at the time. Now, back to this whole performed in 1906 thing, that's a pretty large gap. And when I was doing some research on it, it turned out that the score wasn't actually recovered until 1894. So it wasn't really able to be performed if they didn't have it. It was actually found in the home of Daniel Aubert, which was a composer and former director of the Paris Conservatoire. So it's likely that Bizet submitted it for adjudication, and then he just held on to it, and it never went anywhere. Now, as mentioned earlier, Bizet drew inspiration from the likes of Rossini, Donizetti, and even Mozart, who, despite his Austrian heritage, became historically entwined with Italian opera tradition. For Don Procopio, it features text by Carlo Cambiagio, and it was frequently compared to Donizetti's Don Pasquale, where in Don Pasquale, the young lover is being forced to abandon their love for inheritance, family business, marrying off your kids and all that fun stuff. But they were eventually able to get away from this cruel fate. Now, in Don Procopio, this opera is a 2-act opera, and it features Bettina, which is the young soprano, whose father is forcing her into an arranged marriage to an old man. Yuck! But she's actually in love with a young colonel named Odoardo. With the help of her brother and her aunt, they devise a plan to have Don Procopio break the engagement, which is ultimately a huge success. They kind of do this via, Bettina trying to be overdramatic and saying, I need this, this, and this, and you're going to give me all your money. And it's like, yeah, okay, slay, me too. But by the end of the opera, the young lovers are reunited and, typical happy ending. Now, from this opera, I will be performing an aria called Voler che sposi un vecchio, and this takes place at the top of Act 1, which expresses pretty early on how Bettina feels about marrying this old man. Now, the song features a highly melismatic vocal line, which I attribute to the intense feelings and disgust that she is expressing about this situation. Now, something that is interesting to me is that in the recordings and videos I listened to of this song, they're mostly performed in the Italian, which, okay, it's an Italian libretto, makes sense. But I was able to find one recording of the French, and this is a French recital, so I will be singing it in French today. But aside from it just being a French recital, I found that in doing the translation work between the two, the French resonated a lot more with how I'd feel. It was a little more like stubborn, a little more bratty, and that's kind of my vibe. So that's what we're gonna go with for today. But yeah, I'd say that this piece is probably my favorite on the whole recital, and hopefully soon you will see why. So on the screen, I just have an example of the highly melismatic and coloratura writing used in this aria. You can see lots of really short note values and scales going up and down. She's doing her thing. It's going to have a lot of fun right here. And yeah, moving on to the next opera. So the next opera that we'll be looking at today is La Jolie Fille de Père. This opera was composed in 1866, and it was performed in 1867. Now, this was another opera that was commissioned by Léon Carvalho, by the Lyric Theatre. It features a French libretto with text by Jules-Henri Venois de Saint-Georges and Jules Adenis. Now, this text was based on a novel by Sir Walter Scott, the novel had the same name, The Fair Maid of Perth. But however, the libretto was known to have made quite a mess of the book and its dramatic elements, so maybe that's another reason why it didn't really succeed as much. It was a little messy. But despite this mess, The Fair Maid of Perth was generally well received. Like I said, it had about 18 to 20 performances, so people were showing up, but it could have been a little better. Now, the overall plot of this opera includes a love triangle and a series of really messy misunderstandings. The main ingenue of the opera, Catherine Glover, is in love with the village blacksmith, Henry Smith, who luckily returns her affections. However, there's this really inconvenient guy called the Duke, and he's also trying to be in love with Catherine, and he's trying to split up Catherine and Henry, which that's really rude. But yeah, another character is going to be Mab, who's the queen of the gypsies, and she kind of finds herself stuck in the middle of this because the Duke is hiring her to help him in his schemes, but also she was the Duke's former mistress, so that's also a little disrespectful, but sure. Throughout the opera, the series has a series of unfortunate events that leads Henry to believe that Catherine is actually the Duke's mistress, and Catherine comes to believe that he's involved with Mab, and so it's just this really messy entanglement of love situations. But, however, by the end of the opera, the confusion is cleared up, and we have another happy ending, and the lovers are reunited. For today's performance, we will be looking at 2 arias from this opera. The first is Je n'en dirai rien, which is sung by the character Mab. It takes place in Act 2 and comes just after the Duke has asked Catherine to bring her to a ball that he's hosting, so he can plan his little plans. The song takes on a sort of teasing nature because Mab knows that Catherine doesn't really like the Duke and his efforts are in vain, but considering that she's his past mistress, that's probably what she wants to happen anyway. In this piece, she expresses that although she doesn't believe things will blow over very smoothly for him, she's just going to do what she's going to do and keep her mouth shut, keep her opinions to herself. This teasing and opinionated nature in this song can particularly be seen via the chromatic inflections, the short syllabic rhythms in the text, and the slurs. Now, contrasting this aria and this character is the second aria, Echo vient sur l'air embaumé. This aria is sung by Catherine in Act 4, and it's kind of considered to be her mad scene. Now, this is obviously a result of the mess that Catherine's been involved with her lover, and she really thinks she's lost him, and she's gone a little crazy because of that, which, me too. As a result of these heightened emotions, her vocal line is quite demanding, featuring countless arpeggiations, melismas, trills, and of course, stratospheric high notes. I mean, what kind of soprano wouldn't want to sing all the high notes? I know I do. But additionally, aside from being just a crazy coloratura mess, the piece is pretty loose in form. It doesn't really have a direction. And in deeper looking at the piece, most of it is made of like 1 and 5. And so, for my music people, you know what that means. And it's like, okay, yeah, it really doesn't go anywhere. But this makes a lot of sense considering that she's quite literally losing her mind. It's not really going to go anywhere. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And an interesting fact I learned about that particular piece is that it was initially written to be sung by Swedish coloratura Christine Nilsson, but for whatever reason she didn't perform it, and so it was actually debuted by an American soprano, Gianna de Vries. Now here are just a couple examples from those. This is from Je n'en dirai rien. You can see a lot of this chromatic inflection that's going on here, a little tease in nature, a little fun. And then here you can see the short syllabic notes and the slurs that I was mentioning. For the second piece, starting out with a bang, all these crazy arpeggios coming in on an A flat. That's real fun, But yeah, just having a grand old time. And yeah, that's where we're gonna stop for now, and I will now be performing these 3 pieces. so yeah, those were some of Bizet's opera songs. Now we're going to talk a little bit about his art songs. So, in addition to the wonderful selections from his operatic literature, he produced beautiful art songs in his lifetime, composing roughly about 35 songs. Now, he didn't really partake in the whole song cycle culture that was going on back then, but he did have two publications that encompassed quite a bit of his music. The first was 20 Mélodies, which was released in 1873. This included a couple pieces from today, and pieces you'll still hear, Chanson d'Avril, Berceuse, Chant d'amour, Je n'en dirai rien, and Tarentelle. The second one is Feuillet d'Album, which came out in 1866, and it features guitar and Le Grillon. Now, the pieces I have selected for today span both of these publications, and these are the titles that you see up here, but there are also some pieces that didn't quite fit this bill, but I've kind of stuffed it in where I saw fit. Now, the two selections that I have for today for art songs are going to be broken up into two sections. The first is going to be based upon themes of life and love, whereas the second will include songs from Feuillet d'Album, plus a third that kind of matches in style. So the first little section is going to be songs of love and life. The opening song from this set is Berceuse, which means lullaby. The poet for this work is Marceline de Bois-Valmore, and she was a singer, actress, and poet during the Romantic era. A unique feature of her poetry is that it tackles themes of femininity and motherhood, as well as those of love and loss, having outlived 3 of her children, 2 laid to rest at just 18 and 20 days old, and another at just 5 years old. Now, this piece is set in compound time with an accompanimental figure that emulates the rocking of a cradle via broken arpeggiations in the left hand, set against block chords in the right hand. The vocal line mimics the rocking figure in the left hand and has a rising and falling nature that reminds me a bit of a lullaby. The second piece in this set is Chant d'amour with text by Alphonse Lamartine. Now, Chant d'amour follows the cycle of love, one verse being dedicated to the beginning stages where everything is new and fresh and exciting, the second highlighting the depth and self-serving nature of love and the things that you do for your loved ones, and then the third is a bit more reflective, kind of at the tail end of one's love with another person, kind of reflecting back of, how we got here and how beautiful of a time that we've had together. Now, this piece features a melodic line that constantly descends and leaps back up again, and to me, this is kind of the breathless and passionate feelings of love, a singer's high, or a lover's high, if you will. The accompaniment features a steady eighth note figure, which emulates the excitement of love, and perhaps even the rapid beating of the heart, or those butterflies that you get. Similar in nature is the third piece, Chanson d'Avril, and this features text by Louis Bouillet, who was known for poetry that tackled themes of life and nature. This piece is summoning a lover to go and enjoy the fruits of spring, which in romantic music is pretty much the season of love, where everything's born again and it's new, all the flowers are out, the birds, the bees, all that kind of stuff. But much like Chant d'amour, the excitement of this piece comes from a 16th note accompanimental figure that kind of has that rapid excitement feeling underpinning it. The vocal line has a rising and falling gesture throughout, which symbolizes this excitement and rush of energy as well. The final song in this set highlights a bit of a different perspective of love. It is titled Si vous aimez, which means if you love. Now, interestingly enough, this song comes from one of Bizet's unfinished operas, Clarissa Harlowe, and it was adapted by the librettist for publication as an art song. The text is by Philippe Guy and addresses the bitter and stressful aspects of love and how it consumes your mind and holds you in its clutches. Musically, this is expressed via chromatic inflections, octave leaps, and a sustained note on the word si, which to me kind of sounds like a sigh. There's also a big cry out on the word ah, which is just like you're really just losing your mind going through this kind of stuff. But the octave leaps and all this remind me of those kind of stressful emotions that come with love. Now, despite all of its lamenting and, kind of bittersweet aspect, I do think that there is a bit of resignation with these aspects of love and, that it's just kind of how it goes. There is a chromatic inflection at the very end of each verse to, like, the Picardy third, the raised third. So it's like, yeah, all these things, but that's just kind of how it goes. So now we have just a couple examples. This is from Berceuse, the first one, and as you can see, it's kind of got this up and down motion in this hand, and then it has block chords in this hand, and it kind of like creates this rocking figure. You can see the same thing in the vocal line as well. This one is from the second song, and you can see this very steady accompanimental figure in the bass or in the piano that kind of gives that rushing energy and the excitement of love. And then in the next piece, you can see it kind of has the same thing with all these sixteenths going on, also the rushing and excitement feelings of love. And then for the last one, I kind of want to play a little bit of it for you so you can hear what it sounds like. And you can hear like the s in the very beginning. Okay, not gonna play too much because like I have to sing it. But you can see by that very beginning note, see, it's like, oh, it's kind of a little bit in anguish to me. And you'll hopefully hear that a little when I sing it. So yes, now we're gonna hear this set. go. Okay, moving on to the next collection, Feuille d'Album and Co. Kind of for that last piece, I kind of just stuffed in there. This set is drastically different from the last set, featuring songs that highlight Bizet's fascination with other cultures, as well as his style adoption of the bel canto from composers like Rossini and Donizetti. The first song in the set is Le Grillon, which features text by Alphonse Lamartine. Its title translates to the cricket, and throughout the piece, the character is indeed addressing a cricket. Now, this may seem a little silly and endearing, but its contents of the actual song differ a little bit from this lighthearted feeling. This piece is quite reflective in nature, reminiscing on life and how, in the end, one ends up outliving others and being separated from loved ones. This song is constructed in two main ideas, one being quick and syllabic, demonstrating vocal flexibility via predominantly 8th note and 16th note rhythms. The other character of this piece is slow and more legato in nature, featuring longer melodic lines. This contrast in nature is attributed to the sections that are more reflective and recounting life versus the sections that are addressing loneliness and those kind of sad feelings. The second piece of the set is Guitar, featuring poetry by Victor Hugo. Now, this piece draws inspiration from Spain, featuring aspects of the bolero dance. This dance is characterized by its lively character, 3/4 time signature, and accompaniment featuring guitar or castanets. This is reflected well in Bizet's setting. He also uses 3/4 time signature, a brisk tempo, and primarily an 8th note to 16th note accompaniment that emulates the percussiveness of castanets. Now, this text involves an interaction between men and women, the men asking women for advice, per usual, and the women providing it. In the first two stanzas, the men are seeking help for everyday troubles, where in the third stanza, the men are seeking advice to win the hearts of the women. This can be heard to the shift to a major key area in the third stanza. The final piece in this set is Tarantelle, featuring text by Edouard Pailleron. This piece draws on Italian culture, and it is pulled from the folk dance called the Tarantella. Now, if you're thinking that sounds a bit spider-like, you'd be right. This dance originates from tarantism, a form of hysteria deemed to be the result of a tarantula bite. Its symptoms include an uncontrollable urge to dance, and it was believed that doing this dance would cure you. This dance is characterized by a quick 6/8 tempo, light and quick dance steps, flirtatious nature, and the use of tambourines. Bizet adopts these elements in his setting using a quick tempo in 6/8 time, dynamic shifts, and the use of a light and quickly moving vocal line and trills. Despite its reference to the tarantella, the contents of the text actually refers to a butterfly, using it as a metaphor for the lover that has flown away. This text also uses other elements such as streams, waves, ships over deep waters to express the ever-changing nature of love. Now, separated from the style of the tarantella dance, this aspect is reflected by a slow and legato middle section that features repeated notes on quarter note values and long slurs connecting the phrases. Here are just a couple of little examples. This is Le Grillon, lots of notes, very fast, but this is the contrasting section where it's a bit longer and stretched over time. This is going to be Guitar, which is going to be a lot of fun. Some of you have heard it already. And then we'll skip this example. Well, actually, no, I'm going to play it for you. This is the Bolero dance. Just a little sneak peek of what it looks like. Yeah, lots of fun, quick and light, castanets. And then this is going to be Tarantelle, score example. Lots of moving notes, lots of chromatic inflection. And this is that contrasting section with the long repeated notes. And here's a bit of the Tarantella folk dance. So as you can see, it's pretty similar to the last one, and that's why I've paired them together today. So without further ado, let's sing them. first of all, Dr. May. We've been through so much together in this recital, and it's been pulling teeth for me to get it done. But I'm really thankful for all your guidance and all your support, and just giving me the tools to do what I just did today and to stand in front of you guys today. And so I really appreciate all your hard work and all your understanding and all your patience, and of course, all of the things we do in studio. I also want to give a big thanks to Rachel Zimmerman. Shenanigans this semester. I mean, like, hey, I'm tired, maybe next time. Hey, can we run this piece? Hey, can we run this piece? And she's just been so patient and understanding through it all. And of course, killing it on the keys. I absolutely couldn't have done it without her. Thank you so much, Rachel. I also want to give a thank you to my wonderful panel, Dr. Thomason and Dr. Vissner. I'm not sure if she's here tonight, but she may be watching. Thank you guys so much for sitting through, all this busy bizet and giving me a lot of good opinions and critique about what I could fix, what was going well going into today. And so I just thank you for being a part of this journey with me. And lastly, I want to thank all of my friends and family for being here tonight. I really appreciate you guys. And I'm excited for next semester, so I'll see you again, maybe sometime in March.